Hello, everyone. I am so thrilled to welcome you to this very special edition of Paola's Studiolo. And the guests I have joining us today are a wonderful professor from University of Foscari in Venice, Rosella Mamoli Zorzi, coming from her beautiful palazzo in Venice, very close to Santa Maria Formosa. Rosella, buonasera.
Buonasera,
Thank,
Paola.
thank you so much for coming to Studiolo and for sharing with us your wonderful book that I'm so glad to be holding in my hand with your beautiful dedication to me because I had a chance to actually see it when it came out in Venice just last February. For
Thank
now,
you,
for now, the
Paola.
book doesn't exist in English yet. So this is a very special preview in English of the words you have written here, of your wonderful research as well. And I hope I'll be keeping an eye on you and make sure to share this when the book comes out in English so everyone can enjoy it. And
Okay. Thank you.
another wonderful guest we have this evening with us is the contemporary artist Vittoria Colonna, coming from her studio in Florence.
Hello. Hi. Thank you, honey. Thank you for having me.
Vittoria, you're not a new face in the Studiolo because I have such
Yeah.
a great pleasure to welcome you to the Studiolo a couple years ago. So thank you so much
Mm.
for agreeing to come on this evening and give the voice to this beautiful Venus. So I would
Absolutely my
say
pleasure.
let's dive right in. Before I share the PowerPoint, I just want to show you what I was working with. Okay, this is the catalog of the Uffizi Gallery. Every single painting, it's like I don't know how many kilos this is, 10 kilos maybe. It's like a little newborn child. Um, every single painting in the Uffizi Gallery is registered here. And I kind of went back to see what they write about. And I will share this with you as we go through some of the portraits that are in the Uffizi today. I will share them with you so we can have a little bit of a deeper knowledge about these works that you can still see in the Uffizi Gallery if you visit today. So the star of this evening is going to be Titian's painting Venus of Urbino. And we are inspired by Rosella's beautiful book dedicated to Venus. And before we give the podium to Rosella, I'll just tell you a few things about the painting. I don't know if you had a chance to see it in the Uffizi Gallery when you visited last. You probably know it well from art history books. And this is one of the probably most visited paintings in the Uffizi Gallery. It dates to 1535. So just the date itself is interesting because by the time that 1535 comes to Florence, Florentine artists have long moved away from Renaissance and High Renaissance. They have moved to a style called Mannerism. In case of Titian and in case of Venetian artists, in 1530s, the High Renaissance is still very much the style that they all paint in. And this specific painting is magnetic in many beautiful ways. Of this soft eroticism of the woman that Titian portrays. We have no idea who she is. The first place I checked was the Uffizi website, and they say that this is a young bride getting ready for a very specific event that happens in Venice called Il Toccamano, which means the touch of the hand. So they say that this is an event that happens not in the church, but actually in a private home of a young woman promised in marriage. When her future husband comes to greet her, she would basically touch his hand as a sign of her consent to be married. I don't know how much I buy this theory that Uffizi sells us in a way, because I think there is so much more going on here. And this will probably not be the typical marital portrait that you would expect. For sure, we know that this iconography of a beautiful naked woman that can then really nicely fit under the title of Venus, um, definitely develops in Venice in early 16th century. So what do we see? We see this young woman reclining in a beautiful bed, and behind her is a green, beautifully rich green curtain. that divides the painting right in the middle. So we could have this beautiful background that would then accentuate her beautiful eyes, her beautiful Titian blonde. I think English called this Titian blonde and French called this Titian red color of her hair. And then the other part of the room is actually shows us inside of the palazzo, Venetian palazzo, where there are two women, obviously the servants of Venus, and they're looking for her clothes. They're looking for the dress that she would wear for the day. So you actually see the woman standing, has a dress already across her shoulder. The younger woman is there going through the cassone. This is the wedding chest or the hope chests. So just imagine Renaissance, there would be no really closets for you to hang your clothes on, but they would all be layered nicely in these really beautiful wooden chests. And an iconography of a woman reclining would actually probably start with these chests, with a painting maybe of a man on one and then a woman only in the inside of the lid. But Titian makes this in a very beautiful way. Of course, with every Renaissance painting, there is so much more being said with the details that they're showing us. So first of all, you might see this rich texture of the bed that she's laying on, and then the crumpled sheets. And you really see the detail of how much Titian, the realism that Titian can show us. And then we can go deeper, look at the beautiful pearl earring, giving her a status of a woman who is of the world. In her hand, she's holding an open rose. So kind of the flower probably insinuating that this is a woman who has already had earthly pleasures. It's not a rose bud, but actually an open rose. And some of it is also touching the bed as well. And if you look at her neckline, you actually see that there's a bit of a tan on that neck and her upper chest area. So this is a woman who probably wears really low-cut brocade and beautiful dresses when she goes out on the street. And then we will talk about that hand kind of covering her intimate parts, something that you can't really miss because you see this really straight line that Titian is using to kind of take us down exactly to that central part of the painting. And everything about her skin is kind of beautiful and inviting you to touch her. The soft knees, the beautiful feet, everything about her is kind of inviting you in. And most of all, this direct gaze looking straight out at us. There are many questions about this painting, and I might come to them at the end when we have our discussion. But for now, just take a look at this window in the back, and you see a myrtle plant resting on the window, which might be a sign of fidelity or a sign of Venus, the goddess of love. Roses would be her symbol as well. But probably the biggest sign of fidelity will be the little dog you see sleeping by her feet. Remember this little creature because we will see him again in another portrait Uffizi has today by Titian as well. Here is the self-portrait that Titian that we find in the Uffizi Gallery. He was for many, many years exhibited in the Vasari corridor. And I wanted to show you Titian because he's a very successful artist. By the time his career ends, some people believe he lived well into his 90s, almost like 98. He would die of plague, as well as his son. But Titian probably painted about 400 portraits of the most important people of his time. And we will be seeing some of them today that are housed not only in Uffizi, but also in the Pitti Palace. And just you see an artist, an older artist now, who's already losing his eyesight. And just two kind of signs of three of who he is. He's holding a palette in his hand. He also has this beautiful golden chain. And this would be a gift given to an artist or a poet or a humanist scholar, usually by a king. So to kind of tell them, thank you for all that they did, they would get a chain and sometimes also a pendant. So already with this, Titian is showing us that he's a very well-established artist on the European milieu. And then he actually wears a piece of fur. So this is an artist who did very, very well for himself. He doesn't really invent the kind of the type of the Venus that we will see. And I wanted to show you this beautiful Dresden sleeping Venus that was started by Titian's teacher, Giorgione. Titian and Giorgione had a lovely working relationship, a lot of respect for each other. And when Giorgione died in 1510, this painting was left unfinished. So the scholars go back and forth. What was done by Titian? What was done by Giorgione? Most people believe that Titian actually does this beautiful landscape, this idealistic landscape you see in the back. Maybe Giorgione does parts like, look at this very crumpled sheet. It doesn't have the same realism that we see in Titian's version of the painting. So this might have been Giorgione's part. But the big difference between the two women is that this one is actually sleeping. So she is Venus pudica, the shy Venus. She's not looking at the viewer. She's in her own world. And I also just love how whoever the artist was of the two who painted the landscape, just look how the contours of her body are then reflected in repeat in the landscape behind her. Almost as this beautiful naked woman is just part of the nature itself. So this is 1510, and I also put dimensions here because if you look at this, she is a life-size naked woman that you can now see in the Dresden Gallery. So even just the big size of this work is kind of shocking. The world would have never seen something like this before Giorgione paints it. Some people believe that it was commissioned maybe by a Venetian aristocrat, Michiel, who maybe wanted to give this to his young wife, almost like as showing her wifely duties. But in any case, this will be the image that will then really be kind of crucial in European art, because we will get to see the echoes of this pose and of her message repeated all the way to our days today. Just for fun, I also included another painting of Sleeping Venus of Girolamo da Treviso, who was actually working in England. He was at the service of, I believe, Henry VIII. And you see that his attempt to this sensual Venus is not as successful. She looks like kind of like a broken plastic doll almost on the bed. But still, we kind of get to see that by 1510, we have this image, then 1523, and then our Venus is 1535. So Titian will come back to this Venus 20 years after he, let's say, helps Giorgione working on it. And this time it's a very important commission for him. The commission is coming all the way from Urbino by this young Duke of Urbino, Guidobaldo II, the second of Rovere. And we know that Guidobaldo is very excited to have the painting sent to him because he keeps writing to Titian, asking him in the letters, where is my bella donna? He's really expecting her to be there. And once she reached the Urbino Palace, she was never really exposed in their living room or the guest room, but she was probably kept in guardaroba, so kind of a walk-in closet of Guidobaldo. So every time he was able to go in, he would see this woman staring at him. I also wanted to show you, this is one of the Titian portraits at Yale Gallery today, but for the long time in the Uffizi, our Venus was hanging with the parents of Guidobaldo. So this Francesco Maria della Rovere, look at this interesting portrait of a very condottiere. He was a mercenary soldier who was also working for, at some time, for Republic of Venice as well. And according to my beautiful Uffizi catalog, I now know that Titian insisted to see the armor, the full armor of Francesco Maria della Rovere, to be able to paint it in every detail. So just imagine this very heavy piece of equipment, even including some really fun details, sent to Titian so he can paint this very wonderful portrait. So this is in the Uffizi, as well as the wife of Guidobaldo, Eleonora della Rovere, the mother And we actually know a little bit about Eleonora also through her mother. She was the firstborn of 7 children of Isabella d'Este. So we have seen Isabella in the Studiolo. We know a lot about her. So this is, of course, a woman who grew up in a really wonderful courtly setting. She was a patron of art as well. And maybe one thing that you already recognize, look at her beautiful fancy dress, but look at the little dog. So that same family pet is present in the painting as well. And if you look at the dates, it seems that this would have been the same animal because we know that Titian probably finished his Venus by 1534. I just wanted to have this close up to Venus herself, and you really see how beautiful the details are. The texture you see is not something that probably would have been so visible in the Urbino court. Titian was very famous for making these wonderful vellature, these layers of glazes kind of on top of his oil pieces to really make the painting almost be like you can touch the flesh of a woman. And he would tell his students add more of vellature, add more of these veils of translucent color. One of my professors at Syracuse University told us that in the 1800s, when they would restore the paintings in the Uffizi Gallery, they wanted them all to have the same kind of texture. So at one point, Venus and many other works of art would actually have been ironed with a medium hot iron. They would kind of go over them to melt any signs of the brush strokes. So unfortunately, we kind of see the ironed version of Titian's masterpiece. Look at her face, look at her beautiful, slightly curved eyebrows, very beautiful lips, and then look at the woman that is in the Palatine Gallery, so in the Pitti Palace, just across the river from the Uffizi. This might be the same female model, might be a mistress of Titian. It just seems to be just too many similarities between the two women. And look at her again. And I actually got to see this painting being restored in the restoration lab of Ufficio di Pietre Dure in Florence. And the details are quite incredible. The restorer also showed us that the beautiful pearl earring is actually just one brush stroke of Titian. And the restorer said the more time she spent with this woman, she was really kind of falling under her spell. And she could kind of see her eyes following her around the restoration studio. So look at the beautiful brocades, the silks. I mean, the way that Titian can paint female flesh, the hair, the materials was definitely unsurpassed. Maybe telling us also why he was also requested by so many people who wanted to come and pose for him. A Holy Roman Emperor Charles V came to Venice to pose for Titian. And in his studio that still exists today, Titian got probably a little bit nervous and he dropped his brush. And the legend says that Charles V actually bent over and he said, "Oh, hold on, I'll get the brush for you." Kind of telling you how appreciated, how admired he was as an artist. How did I end up in the Uffizi Gallery? Is thanks to this woman you see on the left, Vittoria della Rovere, marries Ferdinand II Medici. And Vittoria della Rovere was the last of her family, so last of the della Rovere family. Think of the Julius II, the Pope who was a big patron of Michelangelo in Rome. This is the same bloodline. So the promised in the marriage contract, what was promised to the Medici would have been the Grand Duchy of Urbino, which never happened. They never got to extend their power over Urbino. But one kind of prize, let's say, consolation prize for them was that Vittoria was able to bring everything with her. So imagine that she packed who knows how many wooden cases of art that made it to the Uffizi Gallery today. So thanks to her and her dowry, our Venus of Urbino is now in Uffizi. This is the last of the slides I wanted to show before I introduce Rosella's wonderful book. And the book is called That Bestial Venus, Titian seen by Anglo-American writers in the 19th century. Rosella, will you tell us a little bit, how did the idea for this book come?
Okay, I had done a book on Tintoretto as seen by Henry James, it was called Almost a Prophet, Henry James on Tintoretto in 2018, and one on Carpaccio, which was Carpaccio or Carpaccio, because there's a story by Edith Wharton where he wonders, the father wonders whether it's Carpaccio. He doesn't know it. And then I had done a book on Twain and James in the Venice Ducal Palace. And so I had to do a book audition. But also, I had done many years ago, a course on Titian as seen by American writers at VIU, which is Venice International University. It's on an island in San Servolo. And the students were international, and they obliged me to go everywhere to see the paintings by Titian. And this is why as I'll tell you later, this is why I gave words to to the Venus of Urbino.
Okay.
This is the Venus de' Medici, which was and still is in the Tribune, the most visited place in the Uffizi, where there were two Venuses by Titian, and Hawthorne, for instance, went to see her, this statue, and wrote about it. Okay? Next. Oh, this is the Bacchus and Ariadne, which Titian's Bacchus and Ariadne, which still is in the National Gallery in London. And Henry James went to see it, and he adored it. In spite of his coming to Venice in 1869 and following in the wake of John Ruskin, he placed Titian underneath Tintoretto because he was knocked over by Tintoretto. Okay.
I'm glad that Tintoretto wins because he's my number one as well.
Yes. And this is the Venus of Urbino. And you heard the story of the Venus by Paola, which she did very, very well. And however, she has not told you that it was called La Nuda, the naked one, the naked woman, by Titian, and it only was called the Venus of Urbino when Vittoria della Rovere married Ferdinando dei Medici, Ferdinando II dei Medici. And this is uh, the Venus which La Nuda Guidobaldo had seen, and he said to his envoyé he should wait 2 mesi, 2 months, unless until he got the painting. He was very, very keen on having the painting. And some people think it was painted in order to place it in the bedroom of Guidobaldo, and on the occasion of his wedding with Giulia da Varano, but this was too early. And I think there are different stories about it, but I don't think it was done for Giulia da Varano. Okay? This is the so-called Ariosto, which Henry James, um, I have forgotten to tell you, can we go back to the Venus? Okay, this most beautiful woman was the obscenest, it was labeled the most obscene women in by Mark Twain in 1878. I'll read it. Titian's Venus in the Tribune is grossly obscene. It is wholly sensual. The face, the expression, the attitude, not a relieving refinement about it anywhere. She is purely the goddess of the beastly. And the title of my book is taken from Twain. One can't describe in print what an artist is permitted to display to the eye unmasked. In the salon is nude beauty going to the bath, who is just the reverse, while she's much more lovely than Venus. She is as pure in her thoughts and her heart and spirit as she could be with all her clothes on. And this is the statue of the Venus dei Medici. The statue girl, the S girl, as Twain calls it, excites no base reflection. You only think how sweet and beautiful she is. You hardly think whether she's naked or not. Young girls can be defiled by looking at Venus, but not at the statues. And then he takes up the passage again in the in the in the
Innocents Abroad.
in the Tramp Abroad. I'm sorry. And he goes on to define it: the obscenest picture the world possesses, Titian's Venus. It's not that she is naked and stretched out on a bed. No, it is the attitude of one of her arms and hand. If I ventured to describe that attitude, that would be a fine howl. Twain was making his protests against, in favor of realism in art. He thought art in museums could show anything, the obscenest Venus, but he could not describe it in words, in words. She has a right to lie, for she is a work of art, and art has its privileges. So this is what Twain said about the Venus. But many the critic, the art critic, who decided she was just a pin-up was Charles Hope, and he wanted to. Most of the other art historians have denied it. I will read to you something else about, for instance, Nathaniel Carter, who wrote, both the Venuses are gross in person, attitude, expression, and there are two Venuses by Titian, not the statue. If his pencil was true to nature, he must have been acquainted with a very different class of females from some of his competitors. One of his recumbent and voluptuous goddesses has been called the rival of the Venus de Medici, but there's just as much difference between the two personifications of love and lust. And John Hadley, who was a 19th century, thought similarly that the two Venuses by Titian in the Tribune were admirably painted, but to me, disgusting pictures for their almost beastly sensuality. I should think Titian might have conceived the design of them when half drunk and took his models from a brothel. So there is this idea, which is very popular in the 19th century, particularly with American writers, that she is a pin-up, like Charles Hope decided. Shall we go on?
Sure. I think there's also a moment when Mark Twain warns American parents not to take their children to the Uffizi Gallery
Yes,
because they don't want to see her.
yes, yeah. And this is the Titian of the so-called Ariosto, which is which struck Henry James so much that in his posthumous novel called The Sense of the Past, he has a man turn around and come down the painting, and it is the doppio of Ralph Pendrell, who is the protagonist. So he adored, James adored Titian until he got to Venice. Next one. Okay, when he went from Venice to Rome in 1869 in September, James was absolutely ravished by the sacred and profane love at the Galleria Borghese. And he wrote a story, an early story, 1870, where there are two people, a man and woman, a Miss Evans and a Mr. Brooke, who meet in front of paintings. They start meeting in Milan, in front of the Leonardo da Vinci Last Supper, and then he goes to Venice, and they meet again, and they admire Tintoretto, San Cassiano, yeah. And then they go to they go to Padova, and to see the Giotto chapel, and they miss the last train to Venice. So the father of of Miss Evans says, "No, my daughter is compromessa. I won't allow you, Mr. Brooke, to court her." And then they go to Rome, and in front of this painting, having the father having mercifully died, they find that the love has come to a close, and they married. They marry. Okay, so this is the painting that formed, that was inspiration for in 87, 70 story, very early. Okay.
Rosella, I think it's also interesting how, when you think about these writers or American or English travelers to Italy on a grand tour, they would have spent a long time traveling through the country. It wouldn't be today modern visitors maybe come for a week, 2 weeks, but they
Oh,
probably
yes.
would have been here for 6
It
months,
would be
year.
months. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And this is a wonderful Palazzo Pitti, and I placed it here because it is an example of how Henry James could make a story out of a painting. And I will read it to you if you... Okay. The great Titian input portraiture, however, remains that formidable young man in black, with a small compact head, the delicate nose and the irascible blue eyes. Who was he? What was he? Ritratto virile is all the catalogue is able to call the picture. Virile, rather, you vulgarly exclaim. You may heave, you may weave what romance you please about it, but a romance your dream must be. Handsome, clever, defiant, passionate, dangerous. It was not his fault if he hadn't adventures and to spare. He was a gentleman and a warrior, and his adventures balanced between camp and court. I imagine him, the young orphan of a noble house, about to come into mortgaged estates. One wouldn't have cared to be his guardian, bound to paternal admonitions once a month over his precocious transactions with the Jews or his scandalous abduction from her convent of such and such a noble woman. So I chose this because there are other paintings where James works a story, a totally imaginative story, because we don't know anything about this. But I think a romantic story must be. Okay?
Wonderful. And he is such a dreamy man. He does make us dream
Yes.
even today. I love the shadow on the back of him.
Yes. Yes. Lovely. Okay. Uh, I didn't say that Hawthorne was another another writer who was critical of Titian, and and both he and his wife, Sophia Peabody Hawthorne, couldn't stand the Venuses, and in front of the Magdalene, which is in the Uffizi, because the subject was so popular that he Titian painted many more. Titian's Magdalene, the one with the golden hair clustering around her naked body. The golden hair seemed to throw out a glory of its own. This this Magdalene is very coarse and sensual, with only an impudent assumption of penitence and religious sentiment, scarcely so deep as the eyelids. But it is a splendid picture, nevertheless, with those naked, lifelike arms and the hands pressed about the press. Sorry, and the hands that press the rich locks about her, so carefully let those two voluptuous breasts be seen. She a penitent, she would shake off all pretense to it as easily as she would shake aside the clustering hair and offer her nude front to the newcomer. Titian must have been a very good for nothing man. So there was a choir of
What do you think?
comments on the naked women by American writers. Okay? I think we should allow
Victoria?
Vittoria to read all her Venus's words.
Yes.
Okay?
I just wanted to
Because
say,
it's 10 to.
yes. Here, look in the back, you kind of now, instead of the two women, there's so many more of them in this one,
Yes.
in the Borghese Gallery, but very much a similar setting as well. I think, Rosella, maybe we can just talk very quickly about this one.
Okay. This is Beyoncé, and the structure is exactly the one of the Venus of Urbino. She's lying on the bed, but she's wearing pants and a bra. And she's obviously
Pregnant.
pregnant, yes. And I think she would have meant something, ironically, to Sophia Peabody Hawthorne, Mrs. Hawthorne, because she wrote about the goddesses, but about the Venuses, not goddesses, not femininity, not maternity, but only naked women. And she would appreciate, ironically, I think that it's a celebration of maternity here. Okay?
There is one
The
more
last
from this one.
the last one I found after I had finished the book was in Pompeii, the Venus of the Shell, which is a fresco, and it is perhaps the most ancient one. Okay, I think I should leave the floor to Vittoria, but I will say why we went to this show, which was selected by one of my students, and this was 2003, years ago. And the show had been done by Umberto Eco in Brussels and by Omar Calabrese. And after seeing all these people looking at her, I thought I would give the speech to Venus. So this is from the point of view of Venus. Vittoria, go ahead.
Hmm. They look. He looks. She looks. They all look. They stare perplexed, surprised. They stare with admiration, with sincerity. They all look and stare. Whom do they look and stare at? Me. Only me. It's a crowd of young and old people, of beautiful young girls and guys, of decrepit old men, of fragile old ladies, of strong young men. They are wearing leather bomber jackets or cashmere sweaters. They are wearing blue jeans, long skirts or mini skirts, which hardly covers their buttocks. They wear glasses or they don't. They have bleary eyes or healthy eyes. They all look at me. They start looking at 10 o'clock. A clanking iron curtain is rolled up by the guard. At 10, not a second before or after. By 10 o'clock, a noisy crowd has gathered in front of the iron curtain, which is rolled up. They start looking while they are going up the steps that lead to me, as if I were at the center of a high altar. They step up in order to look at me. They grow silent. They stand in a semicircle around me. They look at me, only me. Struck, enchanted, perplexed, always silent before me. They look and stare, moving their eyes over my body, from my blonde hair to my toes. They pause on my face, on my breasts, on the hand on my pubis, on my feet. Then they go back to my hand holding a bunch of flowers, to the rose that has fallen out of the bouquet. Their eyes dart on my pearl earring. They move to my bracelet. They slip up from my golden hair to my shoulder. Then they gain strength and look once more at my body, once more staring at my face, my breasts, my belly, my thighs, and then they return to the hand on my pubis. Then their looks perceive the background. My maids, they look at Lucia's feet, kneeling, dressed in white, her arms into my chest. They look at the standing Violente, my silk dress on her shoulder, at her scarlet dress. Then their eyes return to my flowery red mattress. They go up to the green knot of the curtain, and they look at the window in the background, pausing on the myrtle plant and looking at the sky through the window. They all look for a while. Then they leave and come back and look again at me. But they do not know that I am looking at them, each and all. My eyes seem to look into one direction, but I see every movement of their eyes. I can hear every comment they make, even in whispers. They tend to speak in a low voice, as if they were in a church. A goddess, that's what I look like. They feel they're in a temple. But what else is a museum, if not a temple of beauty? I don't mind their looking with steady eyes or light glances. I am here to be looked at, to be caressed by looks, to effuse joy and pleasure. Whenever the perception of beauty has caused something different, there cannot be jealousy. I am here in order to be looked at by each and all. I look at the visitors and I feel pity for them. I am immobile, but eternal, or almost such. When I am back in Florence, how many of them will be ashes? How many of them will be cripples, or crazy, demented, or desperate? Not I. I shall be here, as beautiful as ever, as quiet as ever, as peaceful as ever. I am as beautiful and young as I was in 1538 when I traveled to Urbino to Guidobaldo, who adorned me, although he was not the first who loved me. Titian adored me first, forming my body with his brush, caressing the splendor of my skin, the gold of my hair, the red of my mattress, the blue of the sky, giving me a beautiful bed and a wonderful room with elegant chests for my dresses, and corridoro, golden leather on the walls. But Guidobaldo also loved me, and so did his mother, although she did not give him money to send to Titian. Who on earth would not love me, goddess or woman, as they wish for the purity of my beauty, for my youth, for my unchanging body, for my shining hair, for my graceful ears? Visitors return, look at me again, trying to see what they didn't see before. The golden lock of hair on my forehead, the clouds behind the window, the small dog. But then they are tired out. They sit down at the end and they give up and go away exhausted. I am never tired. I am lying on my soft pillows, on my flowery red mattress in my luxurious room. I lie there forever. Almost forever, but not quite forever. At 7 p.m., the iron curtain is rolled down noisily, and I'm free to do what I want. We all wait a little until the guards have checked every corner, until the chairwomen have picked up every single scrap of paper. But by 8 or 9 p.m., the museum is ours, totally ours. My dog wakes up. He's missed those who have looked at him the whole day. My servants turn around and stop looking for my dresses. They also have missed the looks of the visitors. But I have not missed a single glance. I move and I ask Violante to choose another dress in the chest. I like the blue velvet and brocade with which Titian had dressed up La Bella. I unpin my hair and weave tresses and braids. At times I take hours to arrange my hair as Isabel of Portugal. At times I let my hair loose as Flora or Madeleine. At times I stick a big feather into my hair or get dressed in furs. Hardly ever I give up the pearl earring. When I'm ready, with Violante and Lucia, I move about and go for a walk or to see my friends. Aretino is the next room, always ready to sing and dance or to make love and read. And there's the tristful Guidobaldo and his father, who help me to look at books. We look at Venus in the Hyperneptomachia polyphili at Europe, the nymph on the milk-white bull. We stop at times in front of Dr. Velesius, vast and erudite, who has doubts on my health. He is kind, but a little cold and standoffish, and he hardly says hello while I pass from a sentry to the next. I adore the Etruscan women, even if we do not speak the same language and we go for walks together. Sometimes the Venus de Medici joins us. But what I really love is the future. I adore seeing all the women and goddesses whom other artists have imagined after seeing me. I move fast and soon find the women by Henri Rousseau in a forest of plants all unknown to me. She's so strange to me. She's so dark in comparison with my light and luminous skin, but at the same time, she is so beautiful. And then I'm in the 19th century, where I don't stay long because all those women look so sad. And Odalisque looks so unhappy, as if she had lost her lover. Another girl lies naked and sad, as if the whole unhappiness of the world had gathered on her face. I go quickly back to the 20th century, where my favorite is a woman made of shining light, more luminous than all the torches lit up on the Arno, her body more luminous than my own. Another of my favorite one is the Venus of Rags. With her, I have a good time in retrieving all the rags and throwing them around. When I have had said hello to all my friends, sometimes I go to the next floor where there is the family d'este. What I really like are the replicas of the Poesie. We all dance with Andrians and Bacchantes and Ariadne. Does not think anymore of the Periphas thesis and stops looking for his ship. She flirts with the newly found Bacchus. We finish the night with the Cupid's apple fight. We dance Carvor, getting hold of the apples and throwing them about before then giving them back to the Cupids. Once an apple was ensconced under a showcase without any of us noticing it, and the guard found it in the next day, and he never stopped crumbling. What very bad manners. Visitors munch apples even in a museum. At dawn, I go back to my luxurious room and have a rest. At 10 a.m., I am there, on my couch, as fresh and rested out as ever, ready to receive everybody's looks, with an imperceptible smile, which perhaps you have not noticed. I am here, lying forever, beautiful and young forever. Dear visitor, and you are only mortal. The end.
Wonderful.
I have to
Wonderful
say
reading.
something very quickly. I'm sorry. It's so funny. I just realized that I put my laptop on a book and I didn't realize what the book said.
Oh my gosh.
By one of my favorite artists, which is a show right happening now in Rome, by Joana Vasconcelos, the Portuguese artist. It's so funny. She was sitting under this the whole time. So Venus is very much around us girls and
Very,
boys.
Wonderful.
very
Wonderful.
present. Um, Rosella, I hope you liked Victoria's interpretation of your
I
Venus.
loved Vittoria's interpretation. I loved it. I think it was wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. It was fun. Oh,
I
thank you.
wanted to
Thank you.
just say before I stop the screen share, just to look at the window here and the myrtle plant and just try to see. There is really no answer to this. But what do you think is the time of the day? Is this an early morning sun or is it time of the sunset?
Mm,
And I think if we
I don't
think about,
know.
sunset.
I think something to
Sunset.
leave us with, if we think about the
Mm,
painting, it's the early morning or early evening. And I think that kind of changes the story of this piece.
mm.
So it's something that we will not be able to answer. Probably only Titian could. But Rosella, how long did it take you to actually come up with this monologue?
Well, I wrote it immediately after I had seen the show, Umberto Eco and Omar Calabrese's show in Brussels. But then I translated it and worked on it.
Wow, wow. So
But
incredible that the show that happened so many years ago. I mean, it must have been such a rich exhibition because so many of these loans were able to be in the same place for visitors to see.
it was wonderful. There was the Dresden Venus. There were precedents and following paintings. It was Umberto Eco's idea that one painting was enough, and one should have in the exhibition all the antecedents and the following paintings. Yes.
Wow.
Thank you very much, Paola.
Thank you, Rosella. I am so glad that we were able to talk about your book. I hope there will be an English edition very soon. I'm just looking at the comments here and a few things to share with you. How wonderful and out of the box, terrific viewpoint. As we always say, if the walls could talk.
Great.
Yes. And
Thank you
then
so much,
thank
everybody.
you. Thank you, Rosella. Thank you. It was really an honor to have you in the studio, though. I admire all you do, and how lucky were your students to have you and to even have you take them on trips and visit works of art and museums together.
Yes. But I thank you, Paola, for having me in the Studiolo because I hope my speech impairment was not too obvious. Thank
It
you.
was wonderful,
Thank you.
Rosella, and your wonderful research really enriched all of us. And I think we will never be looking at these paintings again in the same way. Uh,
Great.
so many other lovely comments. Truly wonderful presentation, fabulous, fantastic. Venus is watching over us. Thank you, wonderful. Vittoria's voice is amazing, and the concept with the perspective of the Venus herself, accompanied by the pictures, is beautiful storytelling. Thank you. Lovely to hear and see Victoria again after Florence a few years ago. Voice reading perfection, addition, voice reading perfect addition to the painting. Yes. Now we talk a little bit about the status of the artist in Germany. Only the nobility was allowed to wear fur, or high-ranking people like Dürer. Was that the same in Italy? The rules are interesting here. I think the artists, if they have a piece of fur in their studio would always have their own sitters pose, but that they can also do their own self-portraits, kind of showing up what they wanted to be seen as in society. Capelli Virili, the painting depicts the first day of Magellan's penance. I might now have to agree with Hawthorne and everyone else. I think Titian used any excuse to paint a beautiful naked woman with a beautiful hair. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation of Urbino's Venus. Thanks for both Rosella and Victoria for sharing. Thank you so much. Rosella, thank you for being in the studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
Victoria as
Bye-bye.
well. The next Studiolo appointment will be June 6th. We will welcome to Studiolo an actor, a very famous Hollywood actor, who then realized in his mid-age that he loved art history, and he went on to get his master's degree at Syracuse University in Florence program, and then his PhD. And he will come to talk to us about his book, which is really his doctoral thesis on Leon Battista Alberti. So June 6th, another date to pencil for the Studiolo. Grazie.
Aloha.